Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Saturday, January the 17th. And welcome to our commentary. Well, it's a little chilly up here in North Texas. Now, some of you, of course, my friends up there in Wisconsin or in the Midwest are probably going to laugh at us because we're saying that it's chilly here, but it's right now it's 41 as I speak to you early afternoon. It was in the low 30s today, and it felt like it. But again, everything is relative. It depends, I guess, where you are. But it is chilly for us, which is why, I'm wearing a little sweater here, getting ready for, want to stay warm. I want to stay warm in these, early signs of winter here in Texas. We usually have some ice and snow, not a lot compared, as I said, to other parts, but enough to sometimes shut down schools or make traffic a little complicated. But anyway, it's chilly here. I feel a little bit chilly, and it's only 41, but it was actually in the low 30s this morning. So but I know. If you're up in the Midwest, you're probably laughing at us here in Texas. Well, I have a post over at the American Thinker today, and it's about what's happening in the finances of baseball with the LA Dodgers and their recent signing of Kyle Tucker, 4 years, $260 million. Again, I have nothing against Kyle Tucker. Don't misunderstand. I hope he makes all the money in the world because that's what it's all about. I'm a capitalist. But there has to be some sense of financial balance in Major League Baseball. And I fear that what is happening is that there isn't. Now, the owners are threatening, and that's what I talk about in my post. The owners are threatening to just shut down baseball and say, we're not gonna have a season in 2027 unless we can work this out. What the owners are looking for is a salary cap, just like they have in the NFL. And look, the NFL is pretty healthy, not just because of the salary cap, but they have other reasons too. But I certainly think that baseball has to look at this situation with the Dodgers and ask themselves the question, as I do in my post: is this good for the fans, and is this good for Major League Baseball? Because you have to have competitiveness. You've got, excuse me, you've got 30 teams, and all of them have to be competitive if you're expecting to sell tickets. Okay, this is the difference between baseball, let's say, and the beer industry. In the beer industry, maybe you've got 100 breweries. And if one goes out of business, well, another one will buy it or they'll consolidate or whatever. And those customers who liked that particular beer will still be able to buy it because it'll be in the market, because somebody else will buy it or some mergers or whatever take place. That's not the way it is. That's not the way it is in Major League Baseball or in sports, because you have to have a team. You have to have a league of teams, and all the teams have to be fairly competitive when it comes to financing. And they're not right now in Major League Baseball. There's about 5 or 6 teams that have a lot of money, and then there's another 20 or 25 that do not, and certainly cannot compete. They simply do not have the same wallet to compete, if I could put it that way. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think the players' union needs to sit down and among themselves and understand what's happening. And the players' union is going to have to save the game because the owners are not going to do it. I mean, you're always going to have 5 or 6 owners that want to win at any cost, and they don't care about losing money, some of them. But it's up to the players' union, really, to save the game. It's up to the players' union to say, you know what? Enough is enough. Let's think about the fans for a little bit, and let's think about these ticket prices, and let's think about this competitive balance just a little bit more. So check out my post over at the American Thinker today. Well, the big story, and I've got a post about this coming out Sunday. The big story is what's happening up in Minneapolis, where it appears that the Department of Justice is going to go after the mayor of Minneapolis and the governor of Minnesota for interfering with ICE and their very legitimate activities of enforcing immigration laws. And the mayor of Minneapolis and the governor of Minnesota have engaged in the kind of really interference that is completely uncalled for, referring to these. I mean, that's what the governor said one time, referring to these members of ICE as Gestapo, and the mayor of Minneapolis making fun, almost mocking the one particular ICE agent who was hit by the car, saying, "Well, he just got hit by a car. I mean, it's like getting hit by a refrigerator door." Well, not really, not really. So anyway, it does look like the Department of Justice is going to go after them, and they should. They should go after them, and they should make it very clear to those two men, the mayor of Minneapolis and the governor of Minnesota, that they don't have the right to do what they're doing. I mean, if they want to resign from office and become protesters, that's one thing. But when you're the governor of a state, you have to work with ICE because they're there to enforce immigration laws. And the easiest thing they could do, I mean, if they really want to lower the volume, as the governor just said, well, one thing they need to do is work with ICE and simply say, okay, look, we've got these people. We'll help you find them. ICE doesn't want to be there any more than they have to be. I mean, their operations are usually very targeted. They're looking for a particular person. And if you can find it for them, they'll be more than happy to work with you, as happens in most states. That's what happens in most states. The governors or the state governments work with ICE. The exceptions, of course, as you can expect, the exceptions are Minnesota, Minneapolis, LA, California, and Chicago, Illinois, where, you've got mayors who basically prefer to argue with Trump than to enforce immigration laws. And we're seeing the consequences of that, the chaos and, in many cases, violence that we're seeing. So I hope the DOJ comes through, and I hope they go after these two men and let them know that, hey, that's not the way it works. The federal law is supreme here. And you have a choice. You either participate with the federal government or we're going to sue you. Well, I guess you're going to sue them. Well, let's see how far it gets. Maybe they'll have a change of heart. I hope so. I hope they have a change of heart up there and come to their senses and realize that what they're doing is unacceptable. They're not supposed to be doing what they're doing. Changing to Iran for a second. I know we've been talking a great deal about whether or not President Trump is going to strike Iran. I still think that decision has not been made, or it's in the process of being made. And as I understand, they're moving some military assets into place, so it probably wouldn't be able to happen for another week or so if it were to happen. But I think what's fascinating, and I was listening to a commentator today, and he brought up something very interesting. He said, why is it that you don't see any marches in American colleges or American schools, or frankly in American cities, in support of these marches in Iran? Now, there were some, I think, in LA where some Iranians went out and marched in support, and there was a confrontation or something. So it has happened in some places, but you certainly don't see the same enthusiasm or the same energy of support, let's say, for the people on the streets of Iran who are simply calling for democracy and freedom. You certainly don't see that kind of energy or passion about what's happening in Iran. And these universities and colleges that were all of a sudden very active when it came to marching against Israel, all of a sudden they're pretty quiet when it comes to Iran. So you have to wonder what's going on here. I mean, I think what's happening in Iran, the fact that people are willing to stand up to that regime, that takes a lot of courage. I mean, it's really easy to march in the United States. I mean, the easiest thing in the world is to do a protest in the United States. I mean, that's pretty easy to do. But when you're talking about Iran, that's a totally different matter. They can kill you. They can kill you, as they have. But why don't we see marches? Why don't we see people protesting out in the streets in support of their, the Iranians who are showing a lot of courage, frankly, in marching in the streets? Well, I don't know why. I don't know why. I suspect that it's ideological. That they think that if they march, I mean, if these people in the colleges that if they march in support of what's happening in Iran, they're sort of like endorsing Trump. Remember, Trump has a lot to do with this. This crazy stuff, this Trump derangement syndrome has hit people in many different ways. But anyway, I just find it fascinating that we're not seeing marches in American colleges, universities, or for that matter, in European cities. Where are the marches? I'd love to see them because I think if anybody in this world deserves support for their bravery and for what they're doing, it's the people of Iran. I mean, again, as I said a minute ago, it's not easy to march in Iran. Very easy to march in the United States. I mean, it's very easy to march down the street and say that Trump is a dictator. That's easy to do in the United States. Try doing that in Iran. So I love to see more support for the people of Iran. I think they deserve it. They really deserve it, especially the women of Iran. And that's another thing. Where are the feminists? Why aren't they out there marching in support of their sisters in Iran? That's another question that we can ponder. Well, I guess we'll have to do that over the next few weeks as we talk about the world with some of our guests. Well, let me leave you today with a little history. It was on this day in 1961 that President Eisenhower said goodbye, the so-called farewell speech, the Eisenhower farewell speech. It's something other presidents have done. Eisenhower, was a pretty popular president, so a lot of people paid attention, very respected president, so a lot of people paid attention to him. And in that speech, he brought up this whole thing about the industrial complex, the military industrial complex. And, a lot of people misunderstood what he was trying to say. He wasn't anti-military. He wasn't saying cut the budget. What he was actually talking about was corruption and, using the military budget incorrectly to benefit people rather than to support the country. And that's really what he was saying. And I have a post over at the American Thinker. I have a post on my blog today where I talk about this particular speech. And I have a link to a gentleman who wrote about all of this many years ago, saying that this was not an anti-military speech. It wasn't anti-military at all. It was actually all about waste and corruption, that he was concerned about that happening to the military budget. So anyway, the Eisenhower farewell speech, one of the more famous ones, and a lot of it had to do, of course, with the fact that it was President Eisenhower who was leaving office with a lot of support, and I think most people saw him as a man of great accomplishment, and he was. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Sunday night, we'll probably get together with our friend George Rodriguez, and we'll talk a little bit about Texas politics. Bye-bye, everybody.